When we think about loving Jesus and following him out of a love relationship, so not out of a fear relationship, I don't want to go to hell, or out of a religious relationship, right? So I got to get baptized, do communion, go to church this many times in order to go to heaven. But actually, I want to love you. I want to understand the depth of your love for me, and I want to love you in that depth. The key to being able to interact with God that way is to hear him or view him correctly. And it's our view of God, or sometimes I say it's the way we hear God, that makes that very difficult for us to embrace God that way, because we hear him incorrectly, we respond to him incorrectly. So there's three general ways that we hear God incorrectly. One is we hear God as an inspecting God. So this is the idea that God is the cosmic drill sergeant. So he comes into our life, he calls us to attention, he goes through the footlocker of our hearts, finds everything that's contraband, right, and throws it away and then punishes us for it. And so we will hear him that way, like God is looking for something wrong with us, and we better get our act together in order to pass inspection. If we hear God as an inspecting God like that, we will respond to him with legalism. So I'm going to try to order my life correctly, right? Try to do all these things right so that when God shows up, I'll pass the inspection that I think that I'm under. I remember being a teenager in college and I was never anti-God, right? So I kind of wanted to please God, or at least have him on my team with things. And I knew, I heard God that way. I heard him in that legalistic or that inspecting way. So whenever I would hear a sermon at church or hear a podcast or something, and I would be excited or motivated to respond to God, what I would do is I would respond very legalistically. Like I remember one time I was inspired for holiness, so I went home and I threw away all my Garth Brooks albums, right? And maybe that was a message from God, I don't know. But that's what I knew to do. I was like, secular music, so wrong. And so I would do that. I wouldn't respond to God's heart or try to know him more. I would try to get my behavior in line. So in inspecting God, when we hear him that way, we respond with legalism. Another way that we hear God incorrectly is we hear him as a disappointed God. A disappointed God. So it's kind of the idea that God is unpleasable and he's always frustrated with us. Like, oh, you could be so great for me, but look at you still struggle with your thought life. You could accomplish wonderful things for me, but you're just kind of too lazy, you're not committed enough. And so when I interact with someone who's always disappointed in me, what eventually happens is I look at them and I say, well, forget it then. Forget it. I can't please you. I'm going to quit trying to please you. So when we view God that way, we settle into responding to God through what we call dutiful obligation. Tell me the minimum I have to do to basically not go to hell, right? Do I have to go to church once a week? What about once a month, right? What about just Christmas and Easter? Do I have to give everything I have to the Lord, or will $10 in the plate actually do, right? How moral is moral, right? How immoral can I be without God getting really honked off at me about it? So we'll look for those minimums because we've determined that we can't please God, and we respond then with our dutiful obligation. I'll just do what I have to do to kind of keep God off my back. And then the third thing that we talk about is that we often hear God as a distant God. God is a power out there somewhere. He's this force, and he's the God of the cathedral, the God of the mosque. He's the God that has to be kept at bay because he's always looking for a reason to nail me with a lightning bolt, right? So when I hear God as a distant God, my response to him is religiosity. I'll show up at church, I'll go to confession, I'll make sure that my hair doesn't touch my collar or my ears, right? I'll pray 3 times a day. Whatever the religion dictates, I'll do that, because that kind of keeps God at bay and keeps him from nailing me with a lightning bolt, with my name on it, right? So distant God, disappointed God, and inspecting God. Now, here's the problem. None of that's true. None of that's true of God, right? So you might have even heard a verse like John 3:16. It's the one they use at the football game all the time, in the end zone. So John 3:16 says this: God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Now, I don't think you really understand John 3:16 until you understand John 3:17. John 3:17, Jesus said that God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. See, here's the truth. We've already failed our inspection. Disappointment is just the way it is, right? The Bible says that we all fall short of God's glorious standards, right? And God is not a distant God because he came to us, right? He's actually not trying to keep us at bay. He's trying to draw us close. And those two verses wind up like unplugging all that. That God is a God of love who didn't come to condemn. God doesn't need to condemn us. We condemn ourselves with our sin, right? God doesn't need to help us with it. So he didn't come to condemn. He came to rescue. He came to save. And he loves you passionately. And that is the God who beckons. He wants us to come unto him, right? Come to Jesus. Know me, love me. I've come to you. I've stepped out of heaven. I want to connect with you. And it's that deep, personal, intimate relationship that God longs for and that God has worked to create with us. So as you process all that in your one-step journal this week with your friend or in your group that you're with, have those kind of conversations. Like think about, well, how do I hear God? And how has that caused me to respond to him incorrectly? And then what is God actually like, right? And what does he actually want? And you'll start to unpack and understand who Christ really is and the relationship that he's really wanting to create with us.